Hi folks, this is Dr. Cywes, the Carb Addiction Doc, and in today's video we're going back to the very beginning. Let's say you've encountered some metabolic problems, you want to lose some weight, you're starting to get pre-diabetic or diabetic and you're afraid of that and want to address that problem, or you just want to look better. Where do you start? So really today is a day we're going to discuss early contemplation of change. And folks, the thing that started me out on this journey in 1999, when I first started this approach to helping my patients, I was introduced to this book. The book is called Changing for Good, and it's by three guys, I believe from Connecticut. They're all three psychologists. James Prochaska, John Norcross, and Carlo Di Clemente. Now, this book was first published in 1994. And what these guys did is they looked at people who successfully quit smoking. And they looked at the stages of change that people go through, the spiral of change that people go through as they permanently change habits, and in particular, addictions. And what I discovered about myself in 1999, when I was weighing around 300 pounds and was morbidly obese, was that the problem with me was that I was eating not for nutritional value, but for pleasure. And it was a very slow awakening where I understood after reading this book that the issue with me was emotion management and how, in a dysfunctional way, I was managing my emotions using the act of eating and drinking and snacking, and in particular, a drug called carbohydrates. Not for their nutritional value, but for their emotional value. And this book really helped me to understand and to recognize what the issues were. Not like this, because this is a complex problem, and there is no simple answer for a complex problem. So this discussion today is for people who are contemplating starting keto. The problem is most of us, by the time we get to this point, are experts at failing weight loss programs. Whether it's some physician-assisted program, some program on the internet, some bullshit like Noom, there's my word, some diet from some dietitian. I don't care what the diet is. We're all experts at failing them. You know, I know exactly how to beat Weight Watchers. I've beaten it 10 times. Well, the 11th time isn't going to be any better. So let's understand how to contemplate starting. And before you do that, before you even start, you've got to own the problem. You've got to understand what the problem is. You have to have an awareness of the problem before you jump in. The other part also that is critically important to me when you use an addiction approach, a substance abuse approach, rather than a calorie reductive approach, whatever that may be, is this. A calorie reductive approach is kind of designed to lose weight. Let's use obesity as our metric. Could be diabetes, could be metabolic syndrome. But the objective is to lose weight. So there's a finite time with which you are doing this thing. Great. So now you've lost 50 pounds, 100. Now what? The first question of contemplating a ketogenic way of life from an addiction perspective, the first question is this. How long do I want to live? How long do I want to live before I die? And what does that pathway look like? And the saying that I use is, I want to be happy, healthy, and then dead. Because it's about happiness and health, and then dying suddenly. That's the best way to go out. I don't want to get sick. I don't want to be decrepit. I don't want to lose bits of my life. That may happen to me, but I'm going to do my damnedest for that not to happen. So the first thing is understand, take your age right now, and let's use 100 years old as our metric. How long do you have to go? That's a very long time. If this is just something you're going to do, it ain't going to work. If this is something you evolve to become, if this becomes the foundation of your way of life, it is going to be successful with a few relapses, and it's going to get you to where you're going. So the first point of contemplation is to look at this methodology as something that you can implement on a daily basis. Here's the phrase: consciously force yourself to do this until slowly over time it becomes so habitual in your life that you don't even have to think about it. It is just your routine. I can't remember when last I ate breakfast. I literally cannot remember when last I ate breakfast, because I haven't eaten breakfast in a long time. Now, of course, I'm having my cup of coffee. That's my thing. But once you've contemplated making this a way of life rather than just something you're doing for some outcome metric, because there's no outcome metric for health and happiness. Those are two things we chase until after we're dead. Then if you're thinking about a ketogenic diet or a ketogenic way of life, the first question, there are 3 questions I want you to ask yourself before you change anything to understand the pervasive nature of what your existing state is. The first question, the first thing I want you to do, it's a very simple thing, but for a few days, don't eat or drink anything unless you absolutely know the total carbohydrate content of that substance. The total carbohydrate content. Sometimes it's written on the label at the back, but don't look at sugars, don't look at calories, just look at the total carbohydrate content. Other than that, use Google. Google will always tell you the total carbohydrate content of anything you're about to eat. And the reason why that's important is it gets rid of all the fluffy noise that everybody out there is pitching to you. The fluffy noise like, oh, these are natural carbohydrates, oh, they're healthy. Garbage, guys. Sugar is sugar. It's a 6-sided carbon molecule, and the 3 that we commonly consume, glucose, lactose, and fructose. Those are our 3 sugars that enter our bloodstream. Get to know them well, and don't eat or drink anything unless you know the total carbohydrate content of everything you're eating and drinking, irrespective of how healthy the experts on the internet tell you it is. And then you'll come to understand that an apple, for example, has twice as much glucose and fructose than the average donut. Mind-boggling, isn't it? Oh, but it's natural. Oh, but that's not the question, folks. Narrow your vision. Get to know the total carbohydrate content of what you're putting in your face. Second question. And question 2 and question 3 are very tightly allied to each other. The second question simply is this: count how often you put calories in your mouth. Count how often you put calories. I don't use that word very often. Calories of any kind in your mouth. And every time calories cross your lips, that's a meal. Count how many times you do that. Now, as most of you know by now, this coffee is a bridge. It contains no calories, so it doesn't count. If you're going to drink a Diet Coke, it doesn't count. But anything with calories, count how often you're doing that. And question 3 is simply why. Why am I doing this right now? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? And is that hunger a biologic need? Is that my body saying, hey, your selenium levels, your manganese levels are getting a little low, you need to eat something? Or is it your brain that says, hey, dude, I need a cigarette. I need a little moment of relaxation. Pop something in your mouth. That's your mechanism of relaxation. And the answer to the 3 questions, is very simple. Number 1, the ideal total carbohydrate consumption for human beings is as close to 0 as we can possibly make it. And most obese people, most diabetics will find that 80+%, think about this, it's mind-boggling, that 80+% of all the calories that we consume are actually some form of sugar and starch. And I don't care if it's fruit that's healthy and natural sugar, or if it's brown bread or brown pasta, or just a pinch, just a taste. I don't care. Look at the 24-hour cumulative effect. And then you'll understand, wow, I didn't realize it was that bad. Because the battleground in the future is going to be against this distorted reality where we try to convince ourselves by trivializing and minimizing and rationalizing and defending and validating and justifying that this little bit is perfectly fine, or that this little thing that is so natural is perfectly fine. The second part, the second question, we should eventually be eating once or twice a day. That's all the human body, which is primarily a fat and protein-based body, needs in terms of total 24-hour nutrient consumption. Anywhere from 0, once, twice a day. No more than twice a day. And the average obese person, the average type 2 diabetic person, eats very much like a smoker. Somewhere between 8 and 12, 8 and 20 times a day. Oh no, I don't snack, Don't tell me what you don't do. Prove it. Prove it not to me, don't prove it to anybody else, prove it to yourself. Anytime a calorie crosses your lips, irrespective of what it is, I don't care if it's cheese or pepperoni or nuts, whatever the hell it is, count it, and you will see how often you put calories in your face. And every time one of those things is a meal, because that's how your body sees it biologically. Your whole hormonal, your hormonal system shifts into let's deal with supply phase rather than let's support ourselves from our liver phase. And it's that hormonal cycling that is critically important to health. And every time you put calories in your face, it disrupts that hormonal cycling, even if they're not carbohydrates. But more importantly, you're not going to sustain this change as long as you're eating for emotional need. When you're stressed, when you're anxious, when you're depressed, when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're bored, and boredom is a pleasure, is an emotion, and pleasure is clearly an emotion. Anytime the pace of your day changes, you're most likely to grab something and put it in your mouth. And then justify that to yourself. Well, that is taking care of your emotional needs, not your nutritional needs. And be able to understand and recognize that objectively. Once you've answered those 3 questions for yourself, then you can understand your relationship with carbohydrates. But that isn't addiction, folks. That's not addiction. Because the other piece that has to go along with addiction is significant tangible harm. If that's the way you're eating, but you're perfectly healthy, then it is part of a diverse emotion management system, like my coffee. There is no tangible harm that I've objectively come across from drinking my coffee, especially as a replacement for Coke and M&Ms. So therefore, I may have a habit, have a relationship with coffee, but it is not an addiction because it does not cause tangible harm. Now, if that does evolve, we'll put it in a different category. But to date, over the last 21 years, that has not happened. But if you're overweight, if you're obese, if you have prediabetes or diabetes, if you have cardiovascular disease, if you have Hashimoto's disease, if you have hypertension, if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, if you have dysfunctional uterine bleeding, if you have any of the metabolic issues, and you're taking medication for them, or they've reached a severe point, that relationship can then be called an addiction. But not everybody's addicted. Some people abuse carbohydrates, and they can control their relationship a little bit better. But once you have tangible harm, and the answer to those 3 questions is positive, then the only way forward in a sustainable way is to treat it like an addiction, not a diet. No alcoholic can successfully drink less. No smoker can cut back to 2 light cigarettes a day. because you've lost the capacity to control the relationship. So once you answer those 3 questions, no diet, not a keto diet, not a carnivore diet, not any diet out there will be sustainably successful unless you treat it like an addiction, which is removal and replacement, protecting you from yourself at vulnerable moments. Before you start anything, answer those 3 questions. Get from a state of pre-contemplation where this isn't a problem to recognizing the magnitude of the problem. Then you can begin. And you don't begin all at once on one day. The magnitude of the problem, once you answer those 3 questions, is bigger than the biggest elephant. And if you try to eat the elephant on one day, you will choke, you will crash, you will burn. But the way to eat an elephant is to cut it up into little pieces and make little changes at a time, and try to be the tortoise, not the rabbit in the fable, so that you're making changes on a regular basis. Folks, that's where we come in. That's where we come in. Once you recognize that there is a tangible problem and you want to begin to solve it, because I can't help somebody who's not interested in changing that relationship. That relationship works for you and you don't mind being sick, go to it. That's the beauty about being fat. It doesn't matter. That's what you choose, it doesn't matter. But you can't live with carbohydrates and expect not to be fat. You cannot live with an abusive spouse and expect not to get abused. It's just the reality of things. But if that's what you choose, I'm not going to tell you any differently. But if you say, you know what, I am fat, I need help. How do I do this going forward? I've done the contemplation. Give us a shout. We have myself, we have Jane Brown, who's our nutritionist. We can move this forward with you. We can become team members and do this together and walk that walk. And it's not a linear walk. It's kind of a stair-step walk. And yes, there are bumps in the road. The question is not hitting a bump. The question is, how do I get over the bump? And again, that's where we come in. Give us a shout. Text or call 561-517-0642. Or alternatively, email kimf@jsapa.com. Reach out to us, set up an appointment with myself or Jane or both of us, and we like both to be involved in your changes, and we can help you beyond the contemplation phase as you start to prepare and get into action. That's what we do as carb addiction doctors. I hope this helps. I hope you can get up inside your head. I hope you can contemplate what the real issues are. As long as you keep dieting, you're going to keep failing, but you're making a lot of money for the people selling you the diets. Take care, good luck. See you next time. Hit the subscribe button, and please, if you want to leave a comment, we love the comments. I try to respond to them all. Leave a comment down below, positive or negative. Leave a contemplative comment, good or bad. Thank you.